Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us at Sunday School at To God Be the Glory Ministry. I want to encourage you that if you are enjoying these videos, feel free to go to www.tgbtgm.org and check out our amazing website. And feel free to give a donation to Sunday School with our Givelify app. And we're going to continue our Casket Empty, which once again stands for Creation, Abraham, Sinai, Kingdom, Exile, Temple, Expectation, Messiah, Pentecost, Teaching, and Yet to Come. And the purpose of Casket Empty is to tell the one story of redemption from Genesis to Revelation. We're going to continue in Sinai, and Sinai is going to pick up where Abraham left off. Remember, at the end of Abraham, we see the family of Israel coming into the nation of Egypt of about approximately 70 people. And the Hebrews, they're flourishing, they're growing, they're populating in great number in Egypt. And a new pharaoh, a new dynasty of the pharaohs takes over in Egypt that did not have any loyalty to what Joseph did for the kingdom of Egypt. And they have a problem because they've been invaded before by outside powers, and they need to do something about the Hebrews to protect their nation. So they decide to put the Hebrews in bondage. But contrary to this, the Hebrews, they're still swarming, they're still populating, they're still teeming. And a lot of the language that is used to describe the population of the Hebrews mirrors a lot of what we see in Genesis 1. So Pharaoh then gives the command, look, we need to do something about them. So let's kill all of the firstborn males aged 2 years and younger. But there's one particular woman who decides not to do this, and she gives birth to a beautiful child whose name is Moses. And Moses ends up being adopted by the Pharaoh's daughter, and the woman that the Pharaoh chooses to nurse her baby is Moses' own mom. So Moses ends up, he's growing up in this Egyptian understanding, but he's still a Hebrew, and he sees an Egyptian harshly treating a Hebrew wrong, and he ends up killing him, and he ends up leaving to get away. This Pharaoh ends up dying, but there's a problem. And I want to read from Exodus chapter 2, verses 23 through 25 in the English Standard Version. During those many days, the king of Egypt died, and the people of Israel groaned because of their slavery and cried out for help. Their cry for rescue from slavery came up to God, and God heard their groaning, and God remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob. God saw the people of Israel, and God knew. And I want to bring this up because of the promise that God made to Abraham that his seed would be a blessing to the world and that they would flourish and populate and kingdoms would come out of them. But there's a danger to this promise because Pharaoh has put the Hebrews under bondage. So now God goes to action. And he starts off with calling Moses in chapter 3. For those of you who know me personally, know that Exodus 3 is one of my favorite chapters. But I don't want to spend too much time on it other than to simplify the fact that God calls Moses through the burning bush and sends Aaron to help him out. So Moses is back in Egypt, and there are a variety of plagues that end up going out throughout the land. Read about it in the book of Exodus. To save time, we'll just kind of skim over it. And we'll get to the final plague, which is the death of the firstborn. The purpose of the death of the firstborn is to punish Pharaoh for what he did to the Hebrews in killing all of the sons of Israel. And so there are some special instructions given for the Hebrews, and that they need to sacrifice a baby lamb or a baby goat, and then they need to eat this meal in a hurry and take the blood and put it on the lintel and on the doorpost. And those who follow these instructions are saved from the death of the firstborn. And Pharaoh pushes all of the Hebrews out, gets rid of them, and delivers them. And then we have now a nation that is leaving Egypt, which started out as a family. We don't know exactly how many, probably about 1 million or 2 million that ends up leaving Egypt. Now, a variety of other things happen But we want to get to the part where in Exodus 19, God makes a covenant with the Hebrews, and he says, I want you all to be a special people unto me. You are a special possession to me, and you all will be a kingdom of priests and a holy nation, because I have chosen you above all of the world. All right? And so what we also see is this special covenant is made between Israel, or the Hebrews, and with God. And Moses ends up going up to the Mount Sinai for a period of about 40 days to get the law. They have already gotten the 10 Commandments at this time. But the Hebrews are very wary, and they decide to coerce Aaron to build a golden calf, and they're going to worship this golden calf. And they have a festival unto it. And it angers God so much, and he sends Moses down. And God is so angry with the people that he is going to destroy them. Now, once again, we have a predicament here, because if God destroys this nation of Israel, then what about his promise to Abraham? But if God doesn't destroy them, then is he truly being a just God for allowing this heinous sin to be committed? Moses pleads with God to pardon them, and this is one of the first times of tremendous intercession that we've seen since Abraham with Sodom and Gomorrah. And God listens to Moses, and he decides he's going to spare them, and he's going to still have his presence among them. This is illustrated by the command to build the tabernacle, and it is completed because God's presence fills the tabernacle. Now, the rest of Sinai, the Sinai Peninsula, we see that they're going throughout the wilderness, they're conquering various nations, and they're getting the rest of the law. And the purpose of the law is to form Israel into God's special people. And they're supposed to take this law that when they get into Canaan, that the people around Canaan are so impressed with the Hebrews that they decide that they need to change. We call this a mission. And Israel was given a mission to spread the law of God to the rest of the world. With Joshua, they end up fulfilling the conquest of Israel. They drive out all of the foreign nations that are in there, and they set up the kingdom of Israel. There's no king, and there is no temple. That is something that is to come. And what happens is, with all the various nations that are around, every once in a while, some of these nations come up and oppress Israel, and God would raise up these various judges to deliver them. And that's where we get the book of Judges. Some of the famous judges that you might be familiar with are Gideon. We also have Deborah. We also have Samson. And Judges ends with the very stark characterization about Israel, in that time there was no king, and everyone did what was right in their own sight. Another person that we end up talking about is Ruth. And Ruth ends up getting married to Boaz, and she gives birth to a son named Obed. And Obed gives birth to a son named Jesse. And we're going to come back to a son that Jesse had when we get back next week. That is Sinai. Hope that you enjoyed it. Come back and join us next week where we will start Kingdom.